First thing you want to do is jack up the vehicle and support it. I did that on the frame rail right here. And then, you know, these are going to be 22s. Loosen the wheel, remove it as I'm doing right now. And then take it from there. Alright, YouTube, one thing where we're currently at. Pop the rotor off, we swap the pads. I'll show you again when I do the other side. I kind of overlooked it. But I did want to point out very importantly that when you push the caliper piston back, you definitely want to remove the top on the master cylinder, which is here. And the reason for that is because as you are pushing the fluid back into the system, you do not want to bust the seals or the O-rings on the master cylinder, because that would just make for a bad day. I'll follow up on the other side, then the certified carman. Right. Over on the other side of the vehicle, we're going to start this side from the beginning. So I'm going to jack up the vehicle. I'm going to place my jack under the frame rail of the vehicle. You never want to lift from the plastic part. Just try to find a suspension component that looks stable on the frame to jack it up. And as you see, we're going up slowly but surely. Now before you go all the way up, word to the wise, while the vehicle is still resting on the ground, loosen, do not remove, but loosen the lug nuts on the tires. And the reason for that is so that once the vehicle is in the air, you don't have to drop it back down because it's too tight and they won't come off without the wheel spinning. So, loosen, but don't remove the lug nuts while the vehicle weight is supported by the tire. Then, jack the vehicle up. Position your jack again on the jack stand, on the frame rail. Okay. Slowly drop the jack so that it rests on the frame rail. And then remove the lug nuts from the tire. Alright, so again on this 09 Tahoe, we got the tires off, vehicle supported. The first thing we're doing on, again, removing and replacing the rear rotors and brake pads. There's two 13mm bolts that secure the caliper in place. Then there's two 18mm bolts that secure the caliper bracket in place. I'm going to very quickly remove the caliper so that you can see what is, so that you can have an idea. And again, if it doesn't come off easily initially, you want to hold the retaining nut in place, which is this fella right here with the big 21mm wrench, and everything else should be easy peasy from that point on. But I want to show you how to remove the caliper once you have the bracket out of the housing. So we removed the 13mm bolts, which were located on the back of the caliper. Now to remove it, there's going to be some dimples that I'll show you in a moment, but basically you just want to use a little strength and wiggle it left to right to release the piston. Hopefully by this point we have removed, I did, but hopefully you have removed the top on the master cylinder so as not to damage the internal seals on it. And those dimples are the ones that are located. Secure the caliper so that it doesn't fall. Remove the pads, and these are the dimples that secure it onto the caliper, which is why you just want to apply a little back and forth pressure. And then after that, you're just going to want to remove the two 18mm nuts, bolts I mean, that are located on the back of the caliper bracket. And I will advise you to use either a 1/2 inch, or in my case I'm using a 3/8 ratchet, but I have this handy dandy pipe that I use to add leverage to the back of the pipe. You can also use a wrench if that's your thing, but once you remove, however you do it, those two 18s in the back, you are just going to want to get that caliper bracket out of the way. And then comes the really fun part, which is removing the brake rotor itself. And I'll show you how to do that right now. Two 18s, caliper bracket. The trick to this is quite simple actually. You spray some PB Blast, which you could get at your local parts store, Advance, O'Reilly, AutoZone, and even Walmart. Spray it right here on the lip of the hub. Grab a hammer and do not hit the studs. You hit in between the studs, opposite to each other.
Got those,
and
washers.
We definitely want to remove these clips that some engineer at GM thought would be a great idea to put in place. And basically the way you do that is you just want to use a pick and thread them off of the stud. So I'll do the first one, but just for the sake of time, we'll stop after I remove the first one and get back to it so you can get an idea. But just hook the pick underneath one of the lips and just slowly rotate it off. It's also probably better to apply pressure to the back as you thread them off. It's a little bit of a tricky situation to do, but with practice I guess it gets easier. FYI, never point this at you, because if it slips and you poke yourself, you'll be having a pretty bad day. We removed the rotor, which is right here behind me, and then we sprayed some brake cleaner just to clean this up, because it can get pretty dirty back here. You definitely want to clean it. Can you get back here for a second? Because you just want to make sure that this right here, which is your wheel cylinder, where my finger is, a little bit right there, yeah, this right here, you want to make sure it's clean and not leaking. If it's dirty initially, that's fine, but after you spray with some brake cleaner and you see it's relatively clean and not leaking, you're good to go. Otherwise, you'd have to replace that, because you definitely don't want a leaking wheel cylinder in the back tire, because it can cause braking problems down the road. Now we will be quickly just, we're about done on this vehicle. We're just going to be putting the brake rotor on, And this goes on just like so. Then we'll put these two clips back on because, hey, if they thought it was a good idea at the factory, not a bad idea to do it here. Again, you don't have to if you don't want to, but, you know, why not? Pop these two slide pins out. The brakes should come with new ones, which I have right over here somewhere. I'll show you in a moment. There you go. Start to thread the two 18s back into place. Always, always, always thread the bolts by hand first, and never, ever do it with a ratchet or a gun, because you don't want to cross thread things. Alright, so make sure that you push the rotor all the way back. Position the caliper bracket on the two bolts like so, okay? And align it with the bolt holes, and start to thread it into place by hand always. And that's it. Now we'll tighten it up. And one last thing I wanted to mention, it helps, it's not to extend the life of your brake components, to remove those slide pins as well as the slides themselves, which I'll do on the rotor, on the pads I mean. And you just want to basically put a dab of grease on the slide pins so that they don't seize up, and put these back into their place back here, and that just helps it to open and close smoother when you apply the brake pedal. We'll put the caliper slides in. There you go. You should hear it just pop into place. And then you want to do the same with the tip of the pads, just where it rests on the caliper. You don't have to, I mean, do not ever put it on the pads itself. And yes, in case you were wondering, normally you want to put these with the outside facing, with the caliper wear indicator facing on the outside of the pad. This particular set that came from Advanced, the Wherever Platinums, they had the wear indicator on both. So, just a little heads up in case you may get a set that only has wear indicators on 2 out of the 4 pads. Normally, you want to put that wear indicator on the outside pad. So, we are just about done here. I'm going to be putting the caliper back after I do this last step, which is take the old pad with a C-clamp, position it like so, and alright, so now that we've pushed it back, this should go smoothly